because money is like blood in a body, like it connects all parts and its health matters. Therefore, the advisor that's taking care of the person with the money, if they're more self-aware and they allow their client to become more self-aware, then it's just allowing for family relationships to expand, community relationships to expand, the purpose of money to be less about consumerism and more about goodness. So I get really excited about all of the ripple effects for sure.
Hi there. Thanks for joining us. I'm Joanna Ehresman.
And I'm Leah Alter.
And this is WomenShare, a celebration of women in financial services.
Today, we are lucky enough to be joined by Liz Hand, who is both an advisor and a mindset coach for advisors. Her firm, Pleasant Wealth, is based out of Canton, Ohio, and she is a second-generation financial planner. We are so excited today to dive into her newest endeavor as a mindset coach. She is passionate about supporting financial advisors through change with less self-doubt and more life satisfaction. Love the sound of that. And she loves all the places money and mindset overlap. She launched a coaching practice where she impacts hundreds of advisors by raising awareness to their self-sabotage behaviors. We all have those. And giving them tools to gain confidence and get into the flow of their life. We are just thrilled to have you on the show, Liz. Welcome to WomenShare.
Why, thank you. It's great to be here with you both.
Well, and Liz, I'm so excited to get to know you on the show today. We haven't met before, but any woman in the industry who has kind of blazed her own path or created kind of her unique combination of skills in her role is just someone I'm automatically a fan of. So just really curious to hear what inspired you to become a mindset coach for advisors while also continuing to have your own practice.
Yeah, I am in the process of working on succession for the financial planning practice. My brother and I entered into a conversation with my dad, talking about the valuation, talking about how roles were going to change, all of those tactical details. And in the process, I received mindset coaching. And I recognized that the style of coaching was impacting me in pretty radical ways that were outside of just the container of that conversation. And so I was fascinated by it. And I asked my coach at the time, how did you get trained? Like, what is this? I want more of these types of conversations. And then I just followed the path, which usually is what happens for me, is I kind of follow my curiosity, learn something new, and then try to integrate it into everything that I'm doing. And so that opened up some new doors, and just recognizing how much in the way that we relate to ourselves, we can limit ourselves, or we can really blaze a path and start something new. So it's exciting.
Well, that's a really cool experience. Well, and how did you, as you started doing mindset work and getting some of the coaching training on your own, like, who was your first client? Your brother? or
No.
How did you expand? I'm like, I know how my brother would feel. I'd be like,
no, they call that a conflict of interest.
Oh, fair.
No, yeah, my first dabbles with having clients really were other advisors that I knew kind of had that desire. They had exposure through a program, Limitless, that I'm involved with, and they know how important mindset is. And so just practicing the skill set with them, even some friends that are outside of my inner circle, just to work the muscle and carry it forward.
What are some of the themes that you hear that come up repeatedly for advisors that you are working with? And what kind of techniques do you employ to help them overcome some of those mindset blocks or some of the big hurdles that you see kind of over and over again?
The advisor circles that I run in are typically really heart-led people that really want to do good in the world. Like, there's a whole span of the industry and different motivations, but I think within the financial planning realm, that's really what you get, is smart people that want to make an impact and have a heart for their clients. Within that, there's this tendency that I see of being the overly responsible one in a relationship, and how that translates to nearly every area of life. So not only do I want to be the helping and supporting my clients, I also want to do that for my family. I also want to do that in my faith community. I also want to do that in this organization that I volunteer for. And so what can happen for advisors is that you carry a ton of responsibility because you flexed that muscle over and over and over. And really that's how you gain a sense of security in relationship with others or in relationship and community. And that eventually hamstrings you. So
yeah,
it's sounding very, I was going to say, it's sounding very codependent.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Right. Or this idea of like, I have to serve or be needed to feel like I'm bringing value to a relationship rather than, just existing as a human, you bring a ton of value.
Have you guys seen those like little TikTok clips where they talk about the friend that's the planner of the trip or that shows like, to me, my guess is that of a lot of advisors end up being the planner of the fun thing. And sometimes that comes from a sense of delight and expansion. And sometimes they can experience like the sluggishness of it or the feeling like I have to do this. So maybe on one hand, codependent. On the other hand, like it's where they really show their brilliance too.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, that's an interesting thing to think about is when is it just leveraging your natural strengths versus, something that becomes slightly not unhealthy, but, like if those warning signs of like, oh, I'm starting to resent this or I'm regretting saying this, it's like, what are some of those cues that because I personally can identify as the person who just planned the cabin Olympics with my family. Right.
That sounds awesome.
And I'm like, was I doing that because I was doing it because I wanted more interaction and connection. There's more teenagers who are just, I want to bring them out of their shells, but then also it was fun, right? It didn't feel like a chore, but I could see how maybe 5 years in, if I'm like, I'm still planning the cabin Olympics, right? But like, how do you watch for that? Is it just paying attention to those cues in your own, like, does it bring you joy or not? Right.
Right. Exactly. That just brought up Marie Kondo for me.
Yeah. I was going to say,
exactly though. I think when we pay attention to our own energy, our own way that we're relating to the situation, it becomes pretty clear. Like even people who don't want to get into the emotive side of life and want to stay pretty logical still can feel that feeling of sluggishness or, oh yeah, this is kind of fun. This feels expansive. I'm sitting up. I'm more at attention.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think too, do you work with clients in terms of, or advisors in terms of recognizing some of those attributes in their clients as well? Because I would imagine once you start to learn some of these signs and have this awareness about yourself, you start to notice it, particularly with clients that might be struggling or dealing with some of their own hurdles.
Yeah, I don't know how you could avoid it. Once you become aware of patterns, that's the other thing is advisors are so keen for pattern recognition and solving for patterns that I don't know an advisor that can become self-aware that doesn't also extend that into their practice, which is one reason I'm so passionate about the work of mindset coaching within the advisor space is because I believe advisors can affect so much change in someone's life because money is like blood in a body, like it connects all parts and its health matters. Therefore, the advisor that's taking care of the person with the money, if they're more self-aware and they allow their client to become more self-aware, then it's just allowing for family relationships to expand, community relationships to expand, the purpose of money to be less about consumerism and more about goodness. So I get really excited about all of the ripple effects for sure.
And as you're saying that, one question that came to mind, and this may be a leading question, but do you run into advisors? It's almost like compassion fatigue. I've heard of this of people working in the nonprofit space, right? Where they have such a heart for what they do, but they take it home with them, right? And I think it's really hard for an advisor who cares deeply about their clients and their financial situations to not, if something isn't going well or there's a concern, to not bring that home with them. Have you run into any situations like that with some of the advisors you've coached, or any advice for an advisor who may be grappling with that?
What I saw in myself, I'll just speak for myself in that question. Yes, absolutely. And there's only so much capacity of heart before you burn out. And in order to serve people, you need to come from a place of overflow to really have the exponential impact that you want. What I noticed, and it was so interesting the way I first saw it, I was in a coaching session and my coach was like telling me or reflecting back to me that there was a way I was uncomfortable with other people's discomfort. And then that I was stepping onto their side of the street, to use that language, to make changes in places where I am making assertions, I'm making assumptions, and it's actually kind of arrogant. Yes, Liz is a compassionate person, but to take that much overstepping onto their side of the street can become, in a way, arrogant. And I was like annoyed with that. It hit me too hard. I'm like, I'm not an arrogant person. But then I go to get my lunch and I'm getting ready to eat it. And my thought there was like, I think I'm going to go to the green space here in Canton. They've got these new structures that are pretty cool. I'm just going to look at it, eat my lunch. And so I parked in this place and there's nobody else parked here. And I start to open my lunch and start to eat it, just looking at this lovely setting. And this van pulls up and they've got like a handicap sticker. And granted, there are 20 parking spots and I'm right next to the handicap parking spot. And so they try to back in, and here in Canton, we have these back in diagonals, which are really tricky, and they're struggling. And I realized it took them about 3 seconds of struggle before I kicked on the engine in my car and moved so that they could have the spot. That's a very small scenario, but that's me way overstepping and saying you can't park essentially, or you can't, I have to save the day on this in this very minor place, when really I could have stayed put. They could have figured it out, or they could have made a different decision. When I accept that people are having the right experience, even when it's hard.
Yes.
And when I accept that all things are being redeemed, even when they're hard, then I remove myself emotionally from it, not the compassion, but the drama of it, which I think it's the drama that catches us and gives us fatigue, not the compassion. So,
well, and it also gives the other person this freedom and pass to just be where they are without feeling awkward, any more awkward or uncomfortable than they already are, because you create the space for them where you're not needing them to change anything, right? I mean, that practice just in my personal life, not even in my professional life, but even in my personal life, has absolutely transformed relationships.
Absolutely.
It's a transformative practice. Thank you so much for bringing that to the show, because that's not something that's talked about very often.
No.
I think I have a lot of self-reflection to do based on that. I'm like, I think I'm arrogant. Oh my God. Okay.
No.
Okay.
But you know what I mean? But I see what you're saying. And I guess I haven't had the awareness to be like, I think I'm being helpful. Right.
Right. And the invitation in that is to use arrogance only from the place of giving the other person freedom to act and be the way that they are, not a place of self-flagellation. We don't need other places to tell ourselves that we suck. We're pretty good at that already as human beings.
Right. Right.
The other
component or even on the opposite of that, or that you are being good or worthy of praise or whatever because you moved the parking spot or saved the day or whatever. Right. It's both of those, which is, we don't have anything to prove one way or another.
It's really shifted my understanding of my role as the advisor, because on one hand, from an advisor perspective, we love to project out and find all the potential problems that are coming your way and solve for them. And that doesn't often get to the heart of what's needed in someone's finances for them to have a good, felt satisfied life. So there's a way where, like, I don't even know how to fully say this. I don't think I've ever said it out loud. So watch me grapple with it. But
yeah, great. Love it.
There's a way that I see this like long future time horizon that I used to go about the world with as my role of advisor, of like, I got to look out way into the future, way to your retirement, way past your retirement, to your death, to your kids. Like, that's a really long way of me seeking to find anything that could go wrong. And there's goodness in that. In the coaching space, you accept that the person is not broken, that there's nothing to fix. It is just a place for you to listen and reflect, ask questions that make them more curious about themselves, listen, reflect. And so it's very present moment oriented. And I've noticed that as I have deployed that skill set more and more with clients, the conversation goes a lot deeper, but also I kind of bring that time horizon in a little bit more, because I'm willing to accept that there is so much uncertainty in between, that even though I see that thing out at age 83, it's not real. And so can I just look in the present moment, stay with the client, look at the next right step, solve for that, understanding the full context of a financial advisor and the tax implications and the withdrawal rates and. That has messed with my mind, needless to say.
Well, and I wonder though, for clients, like stepping into a client's shoes, I think that's probably a lot more reassuring, right? Because I think sometimes the projections and the long term and, you have an 87%, confidence rate that you're going to not run out of, like, it's like, that's great, but I'm still kind of nervous, right? Like, versus if you feel like your advisor is also looking more near term and what really matters and like to you now and where you want to be in the next few years, it feels like more relevant to, for the client than
well, and particularly for younger clients, right? Like those that are not about to retire, right? So if you're working with folks that are in their 40s, 30s, 40s, even like early 50s, that's probably really reassuring to them to have someone who's understanding what they want to accomplish now or in the next 5 years versus what the end of their life looks like.
Mm-hmm. Well, even with retirees, which that's predominantly the client base that we serve and continue to, it's like we're ringing a bell, and it's drawing women who are in that space of retirement alone, whether by choice or happenstance, essentially. And that place of being willing to hang out in the discomfort of what's happening today. I don't think women, which the average age of widowhood is like 59. Mm-hmm. If you think about the average retirement, that's 65, maybe. I don't know. I don't know the exact numbers on that. Some advisor can fact check me. But if you think about that, you're entering one of the most chaotic feeling times financially from the retirement perspective, because you're exchanging, like, I am no longer going to work for a paycheck. I'm going to just let this account that I've built pay me this paycheck. So you got that discomfort with grief.
Right.
And sometimes that grief is someone just leaving their career and reforming their identity and really figuring out who they are in the next stretch of time. Sometimes that's someone who's dealt with a spouse passing away and has no idea what to do with money, do the money thing, but then also the grief. So me projecting way out into the future may be supportive, and maybe that's the thing that solves for the feeling of anxiety in the moment, or more likely staying more present solves for that.
Love
Man, I know I'm like, there's so much. Okay, we could keep going on this, but I do want to. As Leah, introduced me to the fact that you are someone she knows, and that would be a great guest. Really loved following what you're doing on social media. So I'm taking this in a slightly lighter direction.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I would just love to hear a little bit more about how you approach social media. So for a listener who maybe hasn't come across your profile yet, give us a quick overview of your style and approach, and how have you seen that affect your business?
Couple different ways, and it's iterated over time, but the most succinct way is lighthearted and straight to the heart. That's how I view the way I show up online. So it started with video. I really enjoy the process of just being on video, explaining a concept, really punchy, but I like to do it from a lighthearted perspective, maybe crack a couple of jokes in there, and not be so technical, or it's not as much, it is information, but it's not from the lens of like nerdy information. It is through the lens of connecting information. That's kind of my style. And so I try to keep the videos really short, and I've built a YouTube channel. I repost that onto LinkedIn. And what I found is that I also on Facebook. I've got a community of women on Facebook.
Okay. I was going to say Facebook. Yeah. Okay.
Each of those placements give me different connections. So when I'm posting on YouTube, to me, that's like me giving back to the community at large, the community being the world, in that it's easily accessible information for someone who feels like they're starting from scratch, don't know anything about investments, number one. In the Facebook realm, in my private community for women, it opens up conversation in a way where they can ask questions if they desire to, or they can just consume, but not with any pressure. And I also can use a lot of like more emotive ways of connecting. That's more of a feminine approach. In LinkedIn, it has ended up generating a lot of conversation with other advisors, which is fun for me because I love connecting with other advisors. But the other piece that I've started in the last couple of years is this blog style writing, which is it is mindset, and it's all the awareness that I've had and projecting it on other people. And so I write from a way of like, you feel this way, you thought it was this, it's actually this. And that has been so fun for me because I get these messages behind the wall, or sometimes if someone's bold enough in the comment section, and it's like, you just nailed me, Liz. I totally resonated with that. So that's the approach that I use.
And it feels like, so if you are not following Liz, that will all be in the show notes, and you'll have links to everything to get in touch with her. But it feels so vulnerable and personal and authentic as a viewer. And I think that is a piece in this industry that we don't see a whole lot, especially from advisors who might be like worried about their appearance, or, how their clients might view them, or prospects, or whatever. But it is so refreshing and relatable to be able to hear your stories and your experiences. So I'm glad you're getting that kind of feedback.
What's fascinating to me, it just kind of shows to like personality or being state. People tell me that it is vulnerable, and it doesn't feel vulnerable to me for what it's worth. Like, just recognize that in that there's fish don't know the water that they swim in, and there's other water out there. So for the advisor that hears that and says like, I couldn't be that vulnerable, you could, and it actually could support your business.
Well, and it goes back to that concept of like the right people who want to work with you, it will resonate and connect with. And those are your people. Those are your clients. Those that like don't get it or don't connect with you aren't for you. And that's okay too.
The idea of being a station on the radio that people can tune into, and if it's not right for you, it sounds staticky and fuzzy, and you won't get it, you won't like it, whatever, you won't act on it for sure. That resonates for me. And just like, I can be full out me, exactly the way that I am, When it lands, it's a ringing bell. It is a clear station. It is heard, understood, and acted on. So
I love that.
Yes.
So we ask Liz, every guest that comes on the show, what is the best career advice that you have ever received?
That's a great question.
Or one of the best.
So I know this is not your question, but since
this is your show, go for it.
I was going to say this is my show and you can't control me. You could go because you could totally cut this out. But my mind immediately went to the worst information, which I know is not what you asked. So the worst career advice I got.
Yeah.
For someone who is so authenticity driven, I was given advice when I was younger that I just looked so young. I looked so young. Can you make yourself look different? So try the lipstick, try the makeup a different way, fill in your eyebrows, wear glasses. And for some people that works and that boosts their confidence. For me, I could almost be in tears. The first time someone put lipstick on me, okay, I come from a Mennonite Amish background and makeup is not highly, it's not a big value in that community. So the idea of like really bold lipstick, I was basically in tears looking at myself. Like, I can't do this. Who would I be? For those who are more authenticity driven, there's no, that fake it to make it model. I don't think that's the approach, but trusting yourself and learning how to build that trust in different ways that's not like appearance driven is really important.
It's true. I mean, it just continues, Leah. I feel like some of these same experiences, not necessarily that exact experience of like, change your appearance to look older, but those themes of trusting yourself and just leaning into authenticity. Like, I don't know, again, maybe it's selection bias because of the guests we have on the show, but it seems to work, right? Like that these successful women have built these practices and careers that are based on this authenticity.
Well, and I think a lot of the women that we've had on the show, or just people that I know and have had conversations with, my own experience as well, is like we've all been kind of given that advice of like, you're great, but if you could just do this or change this or show up this way. And, at some point we probably have all tried it and then, felt not good about it. It's not, it doesn't serve us. And that ultimately means it's not serving our clients or whoever we're working with and for in the long run.
Yeah. It strikes me, you said selection bias and you interview women, and the process of trusting yourself is the feminine heroine's journey, right? Like going into the depths and understanding self and learning to trust self as to become the hero of your own life. So it makes sense that it would pop up.
From Maiden to Mother.
Good book. Have you read it?
Yeah, it's great.
I'm like, Leah, this sounds like
woo-woo now.
No, I love it.
It's okay. This is my recent
I love it.
thing.
Yeah.
Is that
go there, do it.
The word woo-woo, people bring this up. Woo, that is just in general people's discomfort with intuition because they can't data-driven understand intuition from the same lens of information that they can other things in life. And so they label it woo, and it is just as tangible as data. In my humble opinion.
I agree. A skill that, or a muscle, like you referenced at the beginning of the show, it's just a muscle that you have to train and learn, especially as women. We are trained and learned to ignore it so that we can, politely fit into society. So we, it's our own journey of learning how to go inside and tap into it. But that information is definitely powerful and is definitely accessible.
Yeah.
Liz, outside of your career and all that you're doing as an advisor and mindset coach, what else can we celebrate with you today?
What can you celebrate with me?
Yeah.
I am stepping out into the unknown of writing a book, blending the two realms of mindset and money. I don't know when it'll come out, but I've been testing the concepts of it and it's landing for people, which is cool. And so just continuing to practice, like you guys have heard, maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Carl Richards talks about dancing with the dragons. And like, I'm pretty rattled. I feel like I'm dancing with the dragons because it's just on the edge of my comfort zone. And as he says, that's where the treasure lies. So I'm just trusting this is where the treasure lies. So that's what you can celebrate with me.
Ooh,
Absolutely celebrating that.
Yes, congratulations.
That was a big theme for us when we started the podcast, particularly for Joanna. This was way outside of her comfort zone. We put, she was pushed, and she has certainly risen to the occasion and beyond. So all the good stuff lies on the other side of that comfort zone for sure. Well, Liz, this has just been such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom, your story, your advice. I think it's going to be a very powerful message for our listeners. So thank you so much for being here.
You're quite welcome. It was a real pleasure. Thanks.
And that's our show for today. So if ours is a mission that you would like to share in, please subscribe to WomenShare on your favorite podcast platform. With that, I'm Joanna Ehresman.
And I'm Leah Alter, and we will catch you on the next episode of WomenShare.